Welcome to 412 Sports Talk, the number one podcast for Pittsburgh sports. Steelers, we talk it. Penguins, we talk it. Pirates, yeah, we talk it. With the biggest guests.
Bob Pompiani, Pittsburgh legend. Mayor Bill Peduto, the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, is on with us. Doran Dickerson, West Allegheny legend.
Trey Essex, welcome.
Available on iTunes and Spotify. Hosted by Mad Chad Nolan.
It over too much. Well, now he's not turning it over at all.
And Eddie Provident.
We've got the best team in football.
And now, 412 Sports Talk.
All right, well, welcome to another episode of the 412 Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Eddie Provident. This is brought to you by MCM Studios. You can catch them at 412mcmstudios.com. You can catch them at 412mcm Studios on Twitter. And you can always find our guy Mike Hitt at Mike Hitman on Twitter. Like I said, I'm your host, Eddie Provident, and with me is Mad Chad Nolan. Mad Chad is he's on a roll, man. He's doing the Twitter thing. He's blowing up on Twitter. He's blowing our show up with the YouTube videos and everything. So Mad Chad, you're on a roll, man. What's going on with you lately?
I think COVID made me appreciate sports more, because when I had my son, when my son was born 3 years ago, it was like, and it was right after the Penguins had won the back-to-back cups. I had kind of emotionally checked out on sports. I still watched. Sundays I watched the Steelers, watched the Penguins religiously, but like emotionally, I was like, I think I had peaked. And also, we're getting older, and it happens to anybody's fandom. You still, obviously, we have our shrines and stuff like that of stuff that we enjoy. But when you become an adult, your priorities change. But COVID kind of brought me back, because there was a solid, almost year's worth of time where I was like, man, what I would give to argue about sports right now.
Right.
Because it was political, the presidency, the election, COVID, and there was, and when you get cooped up inside, I think a lot of us appreciated sports to the point where it's like, yeah, it doesn't affect your bills unless you gamble,
Yeah,
which
true.
in that case it does. But it's just like anything else that is a hobby or stuff like that. There's credence to tonight being able to sit there and watch the Penguins game for 2 to 3 hours and emotionally check out from work, from relationship problems, from health problems and stuff like that. And it's just like going to see a movie. That's one of my biggest hobbies. Is I was so excited when the movie theaters were going to open up. I'm like, I want to go see Kong vs. Godzilla. I don't care if it's the worst piece of shit ever, because I want to go sit in a theater with my Slurpee. Yes, I'm a little kid. I get a Slurpee and popcorn or a pretzel or whatever, and I want to watch two big-ass monsters beat the hell out of each other on a big screen, and nothing else will matter while that's going on. Nothing else will matter. And so that's why I reached out to you and was like, hey, I want to do that again. I want to do that again because, I felt like we had, takes and original takes, and we were going to be able to bring something different and of value to the sports world. And B, I just like talking about sports. It's nice. I don't want to sit there and argue about the Constitution all day with people that have a 12th grade education or 11th grade education. I don't want to do that. I'd rather talk to those people about sports. At least having bad sports opinions doesn't affect our policies and,
right.
and legal bills and shit like that. So,
Well,
yeah.
Speaking of bad sports takes, I got to talk about something with the national media. We started to hit on this last week with Chris Carter, the national media and their takes with the Steelers, and just especially, we specifically called out Pro Football Focus, but I keep seeing this, and I don't understand it. And Chris, I think he nailed it when he said that a lot of the time it's just people that are supposed to know. He brought up Steve Young, and he said that it's people that are supposed to know what they're talking about that actually don't know what they're talking about, but they make it sound like they know what they're talking about. And one of the things I keep seeing is that the Steelers are going to draft an edge rusher or a quarterback or something like that in the first couple rounds, and they're not going to get a running back. They're not going to get an offensive lineman. They're going to go quarterback, and they're going to go edge rusher, and they're going to go linebacker, which we do need some linebacking depth. I think they will eventually, they will pick a linebacker. But Pro Football Focus had them going 2 edge rushers. Now I just saw on ESPN today 2 or 3 different people, Booger McFarland being one of them, saying that Kyle Trask was a great fit for Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a great fit for Kyle Trask. Here's the thing about that. Unless, and I'm not going to steal our guy Derek. I'm not going to steal his thunder when he talks about the only reason to get a quarterback in this draft is to trade up. And if the Steelers are willing to trade up to get Trey Lance or Justin Fields, I don't think that. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is going number 1, and it's pretty much a lock now that Zach Wilson's going number 2. But if you're going to get Fields or Lance and you can trade up to like somewhere between 7 and 10, I'm all for that, because the argument that Derek makes is you traded up to get Devin Bush, you traded your first round pick to get Minkah Fitzpatrick. Why wouldn't you trade up to get your potentially next franchise quarterback? And I'm 100% on board with that. My point with this is stop listening to the national media when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're lazy when it comes to their takes on them. They don't put the time and effort in. Because they know that all they have to do is mention the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're going to get listens, they're going to get views, they're going to get clicks. They also know that if they're wrong, it works in their favor, because it's just going to piss a bunch of yinzers off, and we're all going to go off like I'm going now. So my whole rant with this, before we get into anything else, is quit listening to the bad takes from the national media. If you want to hear about what the Steelers are going to do, or what is probably going to make the most sense for the Steelers, listen to guys like Chris Carter, listen to guys like DK, listen to guys like Pomp, listen to guys like Nick Faribault, who does the research, who puts the time and effort in. The local guys that are actually on the ground around the football team, that's who you listen to. Don't listen to the national media when it comes to the Steelers, because all you're going to do is get fed BS, and it's going to tick you off. And that's my rant, pregame rant, I guess.
Kyle Trask is literally, him and Mason Rudolph might as well be the same quarterback.
I don't even think he's as good as Mason Rudolph.
He might not be. That's definitely who when I watched them play is similar. No, unless you're gonna get one. If they, hey, listen, they're not going to, because Ben came back, and Ben's probably gonna play again next year too. Right. So and a lot of this stuff, when it comes to they need quarterback, trust me, there's a lot of that's met with a lot of anti-Ben. People just don't like Ben. There's a lot of people that don't like Ben, and we talked about that many times. But I have friends that, like, listener Joe, my buddy Joe that listens to the show, was like, he has never been a huge fan of Ben, and like I think they should get a quarterback. I will say that next year's QB class does not look very good.
No.
So this would be the year to do it. I just feel like if with Ben coming back, unless you were going to get one of the top 4, I don't want a quarterback. They have way too many needs. You guys,
100%
running back,
with you.
Center, tackle, linebacker, edge rusher, cornerback. They have so many needs and only so many picks. If anything, I want them to trade back to get more picks.
No, and I agree with you 100%. The one thing that I look at is if you get a guy like Trey Lance, right, who's 6'4", 225, he's probably going to grow a little bit more into that body. Okay? Mm-hmm. He's athletic. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's basically everything. He's from a small school. He's basically everything that Ben was coming out of college, right? And so what I would say is, if you're going to trade up to get a guy like Trey Lance, I think Ben Roethlisberger now is different than Ben Roethlisberger 3 or 4 years ago. When Mason Rudolph came in and there was all this talk about maybe Mason Rudolph will be the guy to replace Ben, Ben really wasn't receptive to that, because Ben still had a lot left.
Yeah, he was like, well, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm still the guy. I think now that we know that Ben is in his last year or two, Ben is going to be a lot more open to grooming a quarterback to be his replacement, because that's the stage of his career that he's in.
Also, with if they were to get like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields, with Matt Canada's offense,
it would be a big.
Well, not only that, but like they could come out with a couple packages. Like Ben would still be the starter, but they could have some packages for those guys to get them acclimated to playing in the NFL. And maybe, Ben's not going to run a goddamn option sweep, but Justin Fields and Trey Lance can.
Yeah. And look, Josh Dobbs, you remember when Mason Rudolph was in, they were doing that with Dobbs, and it was actually kind of successful.
That's a nice change of pace. Maybe if Ben's having a bad game, then you can throw that in there, give Ben a break as well. And again, because we don't want Ben throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game too.
And I think that a guy like Trey Lance or Justin Fields is going to, if they were to be behind Ben for a year or two, there's a lot for them to learn. There's a lot for them. Ben can say, look, here's the mistakes that I made. Here's the things I did right. And he could take them under his wing and really groom them into, what you need as a face of a franchise. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. With all of that said, I would still rather them wait on a quarterback. Fall back, like you said, trade back, accumulate picks in a deep, deep draft at a lot of positions, and just build through the draft this year. I'm still on that train. All I'm saying is if they're going to get a quarterback, it better be one of those top four, and really one of those two, Fields or Lance, and just go from there. But yeah, we'll see what happens, and it's going to be a lot of speculation for the next 3 weeks. Like, let's be honest about it. The other thing we got to touch base on real quick, because we've got Josh Yohe coming on, and we're going to get into all the Penguins talk that we can when he comes on. But before we get into Penguins talk, we've got to talk a little bit about the Pittsburgh Pirates and their abysmal start to the season. Look, it doesn't help that Ke'Bryan Hayes, the face of the franchise, the future of the franchise, goes down with a wrist injury. And I really think that they shut him down for 10 days as a precaution, just not trying to mess with it. But they have not pitched well. Everything that we talked about with DK a couple weeks ago has basically not come to fruition.
Yeah.
The pitching has been terrible. The hitting hasn't been there. It's been a rough start to the season. But this is expected. This is the path that they're on. This is the path they chose. They're gonna stink this year. I still don't think they're as bad as they've been playing this first week. I still don't think that they're gonna be a 100 loss baseball team. I still see them in the 88 to 92 range as far as losses go. But this is part of the growing pains, everybody. This is what, they weren't a playoff team this year. Nobody expected them to be a playoff team this year. It was going to be painful. One of the things that I keep hearing is this draft. And with Baseball America, Baseball America put out their mock draft. And I'm pretty sure that they did this for a reason, because the guy doing the mock draft wanted to see what a scout would say as far as which of the two big pitchers was better. But Baseball America had the Pirates taking a shortstop, I believe, from South Carolina, rather than one of the two big pitchers in Jack Leiter or Kumar Rocker. And what that did was triggered a lot of concern. And I think a lot of Pirates fans now think that, the Pirates aren't going to pick one of these pitchers. Look, the Pirates are grabbing one of those two pitchers with the first pick of the draft. There's no way around it. That's not. I told this to my friend over text. I don't think that I wouldn't go as far as to say it would be a fireable offense if they didn't, but it would be close to that if they don't pick one of those two. What I will say is something has happened with Kumar Rocker in the last couple weeks. He's lost about 6 or 7 mile an hour on his fastball. And they're saying that it's not injury related. So nobody really knows what's going on with Kumar Rocker right now. But he's not himself the last few weeks. And that is concerning. But if you've watched Jack Leiter just keeps getting better. And I think that Jack Leiter has officially taken over the number one spot as far as which of those two do you take with the first pick. Jack Leiter is just he went on a stretch, Chad, where he threw a no-hitter, right? And then the next game followed it up with 7 no-hit innings. So he went 16 innings without letting up a hit. And I think he went 2 or 3 innings into the game, the third game in that stretch, without letting up a hit. Against LSU, he got into some trouble, but he threw 9 strikeouts through the first 3 innings. I mean, the dude is just absolutely unreal with his control. He's got one of those high spin rate fastballs that just seems, it gives you the illusion it's rising, but it's not. So he gets a lot of pop flies. The dude is just, I don't see how the Pirates right now, I don't see how they don't take him with the number 1 pick. I don't think there's anything to worry about as far as, are they going to take one of those guys? They're going to take one of them. Like I said, I think that Baseball America mock draft was, the writer wanted to see what the scout would pick between the 2 of them, so he purposely left the 2 of them for the scout with the second pick of that mock draft. So I think that was on purpose, but there's no way they're not taking one of them too.
Again, we talked about it. I'm the pessimist of the show when it comes to the Pirates. You want to make me give up on the Pirates real quick would be not to draft one of those 2 goddamn pitchers.
Dude, if they don't draft, if they don't, they are deepest organizationally at middle infield right now.
Okay? Jack Leiter would be.
If they think shortstop.
Yeah,
that would be terrible, especially since they took a shortstop with their first pick. With their first pick last year.
Jack Leiter is the kind of draft pick that can really pump up the optimism and excitement. Even if I know people, I know DK hates this too when people, he's going to be a Yankee in 5 years. Well, so what? Because that's where you have to adjust your expectations and real, and your realization of the situation is the Pirates are not, they're probably not going to be able to hold on to him so long, but so what? If he's here 5-6 seasons, then you get the most out of him, and and you build around him. Even if he's here 5 seasons, again, let's try to build a team around him in that 5 years so that they can make a run, and then you go and then again, and then you start over, and then you go again, and you start over, and you go again, and you start over
until there's a salary cap or a salary floor or something to force the owner's hands. That's the cycle that the Pirates are in as a small market team in the MLB. That's the reality of life in the MLB. The thing is Huntington and his crew never bought into that. Huntington and his crew always tried to find a way around it. They tried to have both feet, 1 foot in a try to win now mode and 1 foot in a rebuilding mode, and you can't do that. You have to pick one or the other.
Yeah, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
That's in any sport. That's in football. That's in baseball. That's in hockey. I mean, look at how bad the Penguins were to get those number 1 overall draft picks and number 2 overall draft picks before they became a cup team. That was post salary cap. You have to stink for a couple of years in order to be good, especially in baseball, because you only have those 6 years of control at a manageable price for those young guys.
I'm not gonna lie, like I'm I had given up on them, but then the Ben Cherington stuff, I started to, and obviously now I'm, we cover the Pirates, so I have to pay attention to them. But like, I just got tickets to a game because I said, as long as they have a plan and try to execute the plan. But yeah, they draft Jack Leiter. That's the kind of pick where like, I want to go see him pitch. Like, that's going to be a hot ticket. But man, I mean, I'm telling you, I think that would be the nail in the coffin for a lot of people if they would be like, well, we might not be able to sign one of them or blah 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 blah. So we're going to take the a shortstop and be, you know what, I'm done. You had me, but I'm done.
Yeah, I'm looking now. I want to look at something with his. So he's got a mid to high 90s fastball, Jack Leiter, with a curveball that's kind of like low 80s. Like I can't, like, if you don't play baseball or if you've never played baseball, I can't explain to you what a 12 mile an hour jump or change in velocity is, especially when you add movement to that. That is so hard to hit. I don't care what level you're at. That is so hard to hit. I mean, look at what made Greg Maddux so good. Greg Maddux is one of the best pitchers of all time. The reason why, he didn't throw hard. He topped out maybe low 90s, but the thing with Greg Maddux is he was able to change up his speeds and change up his locations and put movement on the ball and make it basically do whatever he wanted to do. And that's what made him so good. You don't have to be a flamethrower to be a good pitcher in the majors. It helps, but you don't have to have that. With Jack Leiter, he throws 97, 98 mile an hour, but can change his speeds, change his locations, and put all kinds of different movement on the ball as well. He's the best of both worlds. Where Kumar Rocker is a flamethrower, and he can change speeds pretty decently, but he's just going to overpower people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just which one do you prefer? Because I think both of them can be dominant. It's just what do you prefer? And because of that, because when it comes to being dominant, Kumar Rocker is better than anybody in college right now, and he's probably better than most pros right now. And when it comes to being just a pure pitcher, Jack Leiter is the same. That's why you got your 1-2 with those two. And I don't really see any way, barring catastrophe or injury, I don't see any way that the Pirates don't take one of those guys with the first overall pick. I wouldn't worry about it. Ben Cherington is way smarter than that. He's not going to galaxy brain this. Like you said, if they were to do that, I think that would be a nail in a coffin for a lot of people, but I cannot see that happening. I think that's so far out of the realm of possibility that I don't even worry about it. But I know that because of that Baseball America mock draft, there were some people who were. So I figured if any of you guys are listening to our show that were worried about that, hopefully I put that to bed for you, because it's not going to happen. The Pirates are drafting one of those two guys. Why don't we take a quick break? We're going to get together with Josh Yohe. He's actually just hopping into our waiting room now. So we'll be right back with Josh Yohe to talk all things Pittsburgh Penguins. Hey, 412 Sports Talk family, what's going on? It's your guy, Eddie P. I'm sitting in MCM Studios right now with our sponsor, my man, Mike Hitt. Mike, what's going on, brother?
What's up, bro? 412 Sports Talk Podcast, Pittsburgh, PA. What is up?
What we're doing is, we're a local podcast. We talk Pittsburgh sports. We're completely supported by people that are either from Pittsburgh or have ties to Pittsburgh. And even our sponsor, MCM Studios, is over in Allentown in the heart of the city of Pittsburgh. But I wanted to bring you into the studio so you could see what Mike's got going on, and you can see a little bit of, what happens behind the scenes here at MCM Studios. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, what are you working on right now, man?
I'm working with always a stable of talented artists. Whether they're from Pittsburgh, they come to Pittsburgh to come to MCM Studios, they move here from out of town, whatever the case may be, a young, old, guy, girl, pop, rock, reggae, R&B, trap music. I just work with a lot of guys that need the love and the attention and the direction in order to get their sound and their business together and their whole artistry, in a position that is the quality and the vision that they were looking for. I kind of just help them bring all that together. So they're like, oh, or I would have been lost for the next 3 years if you wouldn't have said, hey, go do this, or sing your song like this, or write a song like this, or this is a good look for you as an artist. That's really what MCM Studios does, and what I have going on is just continually helping artists. If they get famous, they get famous. If they don't, they don't. But just helping them along on this artistic journey so they can look back and it felt like it was worth it.
Yes. I know how much it means to be a musician and need that backup. And I'll be honest with you, Mike has been a big, big part of the business side of 412 Sports Talk and how much we've grown as a business too. Helping us with the legal side of things, giving us all the tips that he's learned in 10, 11 years of business. So, like I said, I just wanted to get you guys to take a look at the studio, hear it from Mike himself, and just get a little bit of the behind the scenes of one of our sponsors, our first sponsor, MCM Studios. And you can check them out at 412mcmstudios.com. You can check them out on Facebook at MCM Studios Pittsburgh. Check Mike out on Twitter at Mike Hitman with 2 T's. Let's build this Pittsburgh community because there's a lot of cool people, a lot of talented people, and a lot of great things going on in the city. Mike, you got anything else to leave them with?
Support the people around you that are doing cool things. If you can see that they're serious and they're dedicated and they're putting the time and they're making the investment in themselves, at least make, at the very minimum, the investment of believing in them. That's what I did for 412 Sports Talk Podcast. That's what I do at the studio with the artists. Just look at your life as one big investment, and I really think by doing that, we can all help bring everybody around us up.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed this little mini tour. We'll be back with stuff like this. In the meantime, again, I'm Eddie Provident. From Mad Chad Nolan, from my man Mike Hitt. We'll catch you later.
Peace.
Everyone, well, welcome back to the 412 Sports Talk podcast, brought to you by MCM Studios. As you can see, we have a visitor with us for this segment. Everybody's favorite Penguins writer, Josh Yohe. What's going on, man?
Oh, that's quite the introduction. No, a coworker, a former coworker or two who would totally disagree with that comment, but nonetheless, I appreciate it very much.
Jesse's my favorite stats guy. You're my favorite writer. Rob Rossi's the one we all tolerate. No,
Wow.
we love Rossi. We love Rossi. I love Rossi.
I could tell you some stories about him, but Jesse Marshall, I only strive to be as popular as Jesse Marshall. He literally might be the most popular man on the internet, and for good reason. He's the best.
I was playing Call of Duty with him the other day.
Yeah, he's like the guy we all just want to hang out with.
Right?
Yeah.
That's who he is.
Well, there's a lot happening in the hockey world. Before we get into any Penguin stuff, I just want to get real quick a flyover of the absolute robbery that the Islanders made of the New Jersey Devils. What happened there? Like, why, if you're the Devils, why do you make that trade?
And how about Tom Fitzgerald's comment afterwards that he hopes that they get the 32nd pick because he hopes they win the cup? It was a little bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, I love Fitz. He's a great guy, but that was strange. I was really surprised. I mean, Kyle Palmieri is a really good player.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. And especially with Anders Lee out, even though Palmieri is a different kind of player, he's a legitimate top six guy. They needed that. And Zajac is aging. Like, we might have a perception of him that's slightly different because he kills the Penguins always. Like, that guy, has been scoring against the Penguins for as long as I can remember, but he's a solid player. You know, he's a Barry Trotz kind of player. He's going to fit in perfectly, I think, with how they play. Great trade for the Islanders. I couldn't believe that's all they had to give up. I'm still not totally sold on the Islanders. Like they're good. On paper, I still think Pittsburgh and Washington are better, and maybe even Boston, although they're a little flawed in the depth department, I think. But it's a good trade for the Islanders. I see exactly why they did it.
Yeah, I see the Islanders. I call them they're a pain in the ass, is what they are. Like, I'm not like scared of them, but I just know that. I mean, for one thing, I gotta admit, Barry Trotz. I mean, he very well might be the best coach in the league. I've never seen a coach have that much impact on a team as much as maybe he has had recently. But when the thing about the Islanders is when you watch them play the other top teams, it's a little different. Like the Penguins, I was very happy with how the Penguins approached them, and a couple of times the Penguins beat them at their own game. So they don't scare me as much. To me, I'm still worried about Washington. I think Washington and the inevitable Washington Pittsburgh round 2 series is a very likelihood. And man, the Caps they're rolling right now.
Yeah, no, they're better than I thought they would be. I actually thought they might take a little bit of a step back this season. And when you see them play in person, they're so slow, it gets your attention. But they're also just really big, and they just know how to win. I mean, listen, I know people don't like them, but that's a good franchise, man. They know how to, especially in the regular season, that they know what it takes. And I completely agree with you. I think Washington wins the division. I think we get Penguins, Islanders in the second round. Washington always kills the Bruins. They'll beat them. I think the Islanders are it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series when you deal with them. It just is. I think the Penguins are better. And I think Pittsburgh, Washington in the second round is going to happen as it's supposed to take place in the spring.
Now, the NHL will be happy with that. Yeah,
I would think it would be. And hey, there's nothing wrong. It's always fun hockey. So I actually hope it works out that way. But we shall see.
Go ahead, Chad.
No, so we talked about the Islanders making that trade. We're in different territory now because we had the Jim Rutherford experience, and I'm pretty sure if Jim Rutherford was still the general manager, we'd be like, my God, what is he going to do at the deadline? But with Hextall,
and everyone else,
yeah, with Hextall, it's like, he's already doing what I assumed is he's taking a very conservative approach, which has kind of been his MO. What's more likely, that he does absolutely nothing, or that he makes a trade for anything more than like a bottom 6 forward.
I talked with him yesterday, Chad, and when I hung up the phone, I literally said to myself, I don't know if he's going to do anything. Like, I got that vibe. Like, that might be that. I don't think that's the plan. I think he wants to do something, but there's a real chance that he's not going to do a thing. And I think even if he does, this isn't
It's going to be minor.
Yeah, this isn't some blockbuster trade. They're not going to trade Poulin or Laguerriere. I can almost guarantee you that. He's going to try to find a bottom 6 piece for almost nothing, basically.
We brought up a name earlier, Eddie and I, when we were talking, and one of our listeners tweeted in, what about using like someone like a Ricola as a, I don't know what his value is, if anything, but just maybe that and a pick or something like that for like a bottom 6 forward. Is that something that you would think would be like realistic? Because he's making over $1 million on a cap.
He is. Why they re-signed him is just bizarre to me. If they weren't going to use him and they knew they had P.O. Joseph, you could certainly ship him out in the playoffs, and you've got Joseph right there to play if anybody gets hurt. And I'm not so sure he's not one of their best options anyway. If you want to evaluate their 6th defenseman, I think he's really good. No, Ricola would make a lot of sense if there's a team out there that just wants to shore up its defensive depth to have a number 7 defenseman. And maybe there are teams who think more highly of him. I
think more highly of him.
So do I. And, it's his 3rd year though here, and I still don't know how good he is. But I watch him in practice, and we've seen him enough. Like, he can really shoot the puck.
He can skate.
You see all the physical attributes. If you were building him on a video game, he'd have a pretty good score. Like, you know how it is. When he makes one mistake, he'd be out of the lineup. And this year, he's just not playing at all. But yeah, I think he'd be a piece. Even a guy like Ruedel, but I don't think they want to lose him for a couple of reasons. Number one, if anyone on the right side gets hurt, he's so reliable. You can slide him in. You know what you're getting from him. And I think he's under contract for 1 more year. I think maybe he is.
Yeah.
And so if CC leaves in free agency, which he's probably made himself a lot of money the way he's played, you still got Ruedel right there as your number 6 guy for next season. So but Ricola actually makes a lot of sense because there is some value there, I think. And if you could get his salary off the books, if you're not going to play him, it's not a bad thing.
I'm half joking about this, but is the answer to maybe a bottom 6 forward a Mike Matheson? Because Chad has said this a handful of times. What the Letang haters think about Letang is actually what Mike Matheson is. And you see spurts like the goal that he had in Boston, like just absolutely like channeling Bobby Orr while he's in Boston, and then the goal against the Rangers to start the game off the other night. Like,
and I blame that on hockey coaches because someone saw his size and stuff like that and were like, "You're a defenseman," but like someone should have been like, "No, you're a left wing," like because he's a left wing.
This is what has happened, by the way, in youth hockey, especially in Canada, but also in the U.S. If a kid's really good when he's 7 years old, they just make him a defenseman now.
Mm-hmm. Either a defenseman or a center. You're one or the other. Yeah.
If we took this seriously for a second, is there any chance of them moving him around or messing with him, or are they just sold that he's going to be a defenseman for them and that's it? I mean, he's too sporadic. You don't know what you're going to get with him, and in the playoffs, that's dangerous.
I have heard nothing to indicate that they're thinking of moving him to forward, so I don't think they are. It's funny though. You mentioned Letang. I always get all these idiots over the years. Why doesn't Letang play forward? Well, because he's been one of the 10 best defensemen in the league for the last decade. Listen, he can be infuriating at times. He was awful in the first month, but now he's playing out of his mind. I mean,
best hockey I've seen him play in a few years.
Pens Chronicles has been pretty quiet about him lately.
Right. We're blocked, man. I don't know.
I hadn't said that, but he's been really good lately. Matheson, I don't think he's been terrible, but he just sometimes makes these mental errors, and it's like he's never played hockey before. So I think he's going to be in the lineup. And another thing, if you move him to forward, and if it doesn't work, it really hurts his trade value if you ever can get rid of that contract. But I will say, of all the defensemen that I've seen over the years who could make that transition, I know what you're talking about. I think he could.
Him and Brent Burns, those are the only two that I were like, they should be forwards.
Yeah, he's got all those. Exactly. Brent Burns, for all the numbers that he puts up, Like, he's not a very good defense. Like,
no, and we saw that in the finals.
one year I showed Letang my Norris ballot years ago, and I had Letang number 1. He says Burns number 2. Like, you can tell he's like, not that he doesn't think he's a good player, but he's not very good defensively. But Matheson might be the guy who could. He has all the physical.
Yeah. The
way his reach and his size and the way he can skate and the release that he has, he probably could. But I don't have any indication from the team.
They wouldn't. Yeah, it's kind of more of one of those fan pipe dreams, basically. Yeah.
Why is there just no chance of Mike? This is what I hate about hockey culture. Mike Sullivan has coached his ass off this year. And I was, even at the beginning of the year, I wasn't turning on Sullivan, but I know how hockey locker rooms can be. Playing youth hockey and even a little bit of adult league is like, there's only so many times we can hear the same thing. There's only so many times Crosby and Malkin and those guys can hear the same thing. And sometimes you just need a fresh start for everybody. It doesn't mean that it's one person's fault versus the other. But here we go again, where people were doubting Sullivan, and he's like, you know what? I mean, and granted, the goaltending and players playing better were also a part of it. There's only so much he can do. But now I'm like, he should probably be a real candidate for the Jack Adams. And it's like, well, no, because he has Crosby and the perception is that Pittsburgh should be good. I don't, help me understand that, and help me understand why Sullivan just has no shot at ever being, considered for that.
The Jack Adams Award, and I think it's like this in other sports too. The NFL is a good example. For whatever reason, Coach of the Year always goes to the team that we thought was going to suck, but they're actually good this year. So we're going to make him Coach of the Year. That's just has Belichick ever won? Maybe once or twice.
I think he won it once. Yeah.
I don't know if Chuck Noll ever won it. I mean, it's just a weird thing in hockey. I don't think Scotty Bowman, or maybe like once. But you're right. He has done a spectacular job. He has one thing in common, one interesting thing in common with Dan Biles. He seems to do a lot of his best work when half of the team is injured, which is very interesting. I mean, really, like those games against the Islanders a couple weeks ago, and they literally had 6 forwards out, and I mean, they controlled those games. They were the better team. Like the coach is doing something right.
I was going to say, do you think that maybe that's just a testament to his scheme, that when he doesn't have to worry about the personality of the players as much, his scheme comes into play? Well, I was going to say,
it might be a hockey culture thing where those guys are just like the Angelos of the world. You're going to have an easier time getting them to buy into what you want to do versus an Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby who are like, hey, these are the best players of their generation, so go do this. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go do my own thing.
Yeah, make no mistake. And Crosby, Letang, Malkin, I like all of them on a personal level. They're all all-time greats. And they're easy to coach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Lemieux wasn't easy to coach.
Neither was number 68, I assure you. Yeah. Like, no, I mean, that's the way it works. So, yeah, those guys are easier to deal with. I also think adrenaline has something to do with it. I think Crosby and Letang in March, when those guys were out, they were spectacular. I mean, almost every single night. So I don't know if they were going to maintain that level of play. They knew they had to be great during that stretch, and to their credit, they absolutely were. But it's just interesting to me. This team, it seems like it happens every year. Like, oh boy, all these people are out. They might not make the playoffs. They're going to have a tough. They go 3-2 over 15 games, and they're fine. They just have that way about them. They're just a good organization. They don't always do everything perfectly. I know there's nothing in the farm system right now, but they just have a bunch of people who know how to win. And I think Mike Sullivan's at the very top of that. I just think he's a great coach. I don't agree with everything that he does.
No,
I don't. He certainly last summer, I thought, had his worst playoff series as Penguins coach with some of the lineup decisions that he made. And you know who I'm talking about? Not just Jack.
We know. You know, I know.
Where he shouldn't have been playing, like that. That's on the coach. But more times than not, this guy makes the right decisions.
Yeah, it's the Mark Donk Buzz Flibbit effect, I think. Borrow a Twitter legend. Chad, I know you've got one, because I think that Josh and I are probably going to be disagreeing with you on this next question.
Well, no. So we're still in the world of we have to do something about Tom Wilson, and I read all your work, and your colleagues as well, and there's a lot of people, especially in this town and also in the national media, that are still convinced that you need a Ryan Reeves or someone of that nature to deal with Tom Wilson. And I am of the other spectrum where the best thing to do is to let Tom Wilson take bad penalties and get suspended and beat their ass on the scoreboard. Because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, everybody's different. I can't imagine that Tom Wilson would look over to the bench and see one of those, enforcers and go, well, gosh, guys, I'm not going to do anything today because I'm scared. Like, he's still going to be Tom Wilson, and then all you're going to do is create this, like, Red Wings avalanche massacre where guys are just taking runs at each other. I'd rather the Penguins go, hey, we're not gonna let Tom Wilson get us off our game. We're gonna, play our game, and if they want to take runs, we'll just score on the power play, hopefully.
Eddie, do you disagree?
Kind of, sort of. I'll let you answer.
Eddie still believes there's a role for.
I believe. Okay, here's
enforcer.
my thought. Look at the Tampa Bay Lightning last year, right? They are the most skilled team in hockey. They've got Nikita Kucherov.
Braden Point.
They had Stamkos for a shift, and he scored.
Braden Point.
Braden Point. They've got
Victor Hedman.
Sergachev. Yeah, Hedman. But look at Hedman. Look at Zach Bogosian. Look at all these other pieces that they had. They're huge. They're big dudes. They play heavy. I'm not saying that you need to go out and I'm not saying to bring back Eric Goddard or one of those type of guys. What I'm saying is have like maybe a nuclear option that's down in the AHL that maybe you bring up for a game or two. He's not a normal part of the lineup. He's not one of those dudes that are going to get, 7-8 minutes a game. He comes up once or twice a year to prove a point to a team or two, and that's it. And then get a couple of guys that play a little bit heavier, but they're not going to be your main guys. I think you need skill, you need speed to win in the NHL, but you have to be able to play a little bit heavier. And when you have a guy like Tom Wilson on the ice or a guy like Brad Marchand on the ice who's a pest and just an annoyance, someone that can kind of combat that, because we've learned just recently that NHL refs don't ref the game the way it's supposed to be ref.
That's the biggest issue.
And so if NHL refs were reffing the game the way it's supposed to be called, I would be 100% in your corner, Chad. But because the refereeing is so piss poor in the NHL, you unfortunately have to have that little bit of grit and, to steal a Brian Burke word, pugnacity in your in your lineup.
Well, yeah, both very compelling arguments. Here's the problem for the Penguins. Like, do I think it's a problem in terms of Tom Wilson maybe just taking out 4 players in one playoff series? I do. Like, I do think Wilson and the Capitals view the Penguins as sitting ducks. I absolutely do. Here's the problem. If the Penguins go out and get one tough guy right now before the deadline, I don't think one player makes a difference. I don't.
No, neither do I.
I think if you have an entire team of bigger players, tougher guys, does that maybe make Tom Wilson think twice? Maybe. I don't know. But then again, like, Boston has that. He cheap shotted them. Like, I mean, I don't know that it'll really stop. I do think overall toughness is an issue for the Penguins, and that doesn't mean they need Eric Goddard. When I think of that, I mean that they get their ass kicked in front of their net a lot. It means one of the smaller teams in the league, and big teams are going to get
you don't need to be 6'4" to be tough. Patrick Hornquist, they already had that guy.
Yeah, I was just going to say the perfect guy that I'd be talking about right now is they traded him for Mike Matheson.
No, you're absolutely right. I didn't, and he's played really well down there. I guess he's hurt right now, but it's a tough thing for the Penguins though, because I actually asked Burke about this a couple weeks ago, and I promise you guys, changes are coming. There's going to be some toughness added to this team. I don't think at the deadline necessarily. I think this summer.
Right.
Like this deadline might be a little bit of a buzzkill. I think July is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, around the league, there's going to be all kinds of wild stuff going on then. But if you bring in one guy, I think Tom Wilson's going to be like, oh, God, I better not take a run at Teddy Bluger now because there's that one guy on the – no, it's not going to make – so for this season, for this deadline – I don't think it makes a difference, but overall, could they use some more size? Probably. And I will say this: I don't mean to sound like a dinosaur here, but I watch a lot of hockey, and like, who was it for the Sabres were taking runs at Crosby? I forget who it was now.
Rasmussen.
Thank you. If that would have happened to Patrice Bergeron, every Bruin on the ice would have attacked him. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I do find the Penguins at times they just stand there and let it happen to Crosby a little too much for my liking, personally.
I agree with.
I
Yeah.
think other teams know that. And I think that makes him more of a target.
But here's the thing: like you've got guys like Freddie Gaudreau, who's 6 foot. You've got a guy like Anthony Angelo, who's 6'5" and plays big, and is, and these guys were adding to the lineup. It's not like they're not adding to the lineup. I would rather them, instead of going out and trading for a big tough guy, keep guys like that in the lineup and don't dress Skeevier and Lafferty and Jankowski. Like, dress those guys who are producing and they play big. Like, why not do that? Like, that's my question.
I'm fine with that. And, thank God size isn't everything in life, guys, because
some guys watching like, hell yeah.
No, you don't think. Mark Jankowski's 6'4".
He doesn't play like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't play like he's 6'4".
It was like Rick Tocchet was 6 foot 200 pounds and nobody would fight him because they were terrified of him. Like, so it doesn't always.
Dude, I'm 6'4", 280, and I've gotten beat up by people under 6 foot. So I mean, it's.
Well, let me ask you this, Josh, because this is maybe the most. It's easy for us and even you to sit here and debate about if it's worth it or not, without telling us like what players exactly said what. Do you get the idea that the majority of that locker room is probably like, yeah, we want some guys like that?
Not necessarily, but I will tell you this. And I say this is always an interesting conversation because you have some people got to get tough and some people are like, just play. You won 2 cups playing that way, right? But I will say this. When I talk with Sidney Crosby about this subject, and if you ask him, hey, do you want someone like Ryan Reeves around, whether you're talking on the record, off the record, he will absolutely tell you yes, and it makes him feel more comfortable, and it makes Geno feel more comfortable when they have someone, a Ryan Reeves type. So you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, definitely.
How he feels on the ice is
They're the ones playing. I'm not playing against Tom Wilson, so,
It's interesting you bring that up, Josh, because I was – like this time last year and 2 years ago, I was 100% in Chad's camp, maybe even further than Chad is on the speed skill thing. But I kept having these arguments with my pops, and my dad always would talk about
back in my day.
Yeah, well, like it was the human element that he always talked.
You're right.
And so like now again, this is a terrible example, and it really is one of those back in my days. But the example that he used is, we grew up in Hazelwood, and they had a Hazelwood Hockey League back when my dad was younger. And my dad boxed and was also one of the street guys. And so he was on a team where he normally was a goal scorer, but for 2 seasons, he didn't score any goals because everybody was taking cheap shots at their other guy. And so my dad became the tough guy. And his point was, you don't realize how much you're focused on defending yourself and how much that takes away from your gameplay until you're actually in that situation. And I assume if it's on a street level, a street hockey level, if that applies, I would assume it would apply in the NHL as well, where a guy like Sid or a guy like Geno, that gets into the back of their mind if they're constantly looking over their shoulder.
First of all, did you just say your dad was a boxer from Hazelwood?
Yeah.
I'm not messing with your dad, man.
Listen, I heard all of the stories, and he would never tell me the stories when I was growing up. And then I started hearing this. My grandparents own a bar, and I started hearing all the stories from the guys at the bar, And then I was like 12 years old, and I watched him just absolutely destroy a dude that was high on amphetamines. He almost, true story. The dude almost hit myself, my brother, and my sister with his pickup truck. And as he was driving past, my dad swung at the pickup truck and caught the tailgate. And the dude stopped the car at the top of our street, and my dad just went up and absolutely destroyed him. And 12 years old, I made a business decision. I'm not going to get on his bad side.
I think your dad needs to be the Penguins' 4th line right.
Hey, you know what? Chad had some run-ins with my dad playing down the run, man. Like Chad did a really good job of getting under my dad's skin.
This may shock you, but I'm really good at getting under people's skin. Not just on Twitter either.
Oh yeah, man.
Well, no, but I mean, back to the topic at hand. Here's the interesting part. Like, we know Mike Sullivan likes guys who are fast, who play the game. Kind of the way their lineup is set up right now. I mean, he and Rutherford, maybe they weren't on the same page with Ryan Reeves. But in general, Jim would go out and get the kind of guys Sullivan wanted. Burke and Hextall, I'm pretty sure, have a completely different philosophy. And that's going to be interesting. And Burke even told me last week, like, he's aware that Sullivan likes certain players and they're going to have a talk. Like okay, that sounds interesting. So that's why this summer to me is so fascinating to see what kind of route they go philosophically.
Well, not only do they have that going on, but my last thing for you, and I'll let Eddie go after me, is this summer marks Malkin and Letang only having 1 year left on their contract. I want them, as a fan, to retire Penguins. I feel like, and I know business is business and this and that, I feel like they've earned that right, just kind of like Big Ben has earned that right. How much of an impact is going to be now that they have a new GM and Burke as the director of operations? How much impact and say do Letang and Malkin have? Like, are they going to say, like, hey, we want to retire Penguins? Also, like Lemieux and Crosby, like, is there any, like, do they have a say as well? Like, can Lemieux go in there and say, like, hey, listen, I want to keep Geno here because he's meant so much to us. I want to do whatever it takes. How are all those dynamics going to play out?
Really good question. I know for a fact that Mario has always made it very clear that he wants Sid and Geno both to retire Penguins someday.
And Crosby has said the same, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Sid has a lot of power too. And not only have those three guys played together for 15 years now, they're all really close friends for what that's worth. And they really are. Remember Crosby's the big ceremony for him, it was 1000th game a couple months ago. He got tears in his eyes, and that happened when Malkin and Letang were speaking. Like, you could tell that impacted him a little differently. It's going to be interesting. My question is, would Malkin and Letang be willing to take a pay cut?
They're going to have to.
I think they have to, and not a huge one. But
Malkin's not a $9.5 million player anymore. He's just not.
I agree, and he certainly won't be 2 or 3 years from now. Yeah. That doesn't mean he's still not a fine number 2 center 2 or 3 years.
He is. Yeah.
If he wants to play for $6 or $7 million a year, and if Letang would be willing to take maybe a little bit less money, sure, you give him maybe a couple of years. They're not going to get 4 or 5 year contract at their ages, I don't think, and they have to understand that. But I will say this: I don't think they're going to get traded. A lot of people ask me this summer, could they go? They only have 1 year left on their contract after this season. I don't think their value would really be worth trading them. I just don't see it. So I think they're here for the next year and a half. Whether or not they're extended beyond that or not, we will see.
Do you think if you had to bet right now, would you say that at least one of them will for sure get a contract extension?
Yes, I would bet that both of them probably will. And
okay.
I think Malkin's more likely than Letang, primarily because they already have Marino locked in on the right side. I know he's had a disappointing year, but he's a top 4 defenseman right-handed, right? They obviously have no one to replace Crosby or Malkin in the organization.
Right.
Close. I'd say Malkin's more likely than Letang, but at this very moment, I bet you they both get 2 year extensions or something along those lines. I could see that happening, especially with how well they've both played in the last month. Letang has been awesome the last month, and Malkin was playing really well before he got hurt as well.
When do you think Malkin ends up in Russia?
You know what? I'm not sure that he ever is going to play in Russia. I know everyone always assumes that. I think Ovi will. I think if Ovi could break Gretzky's record, then go play for a year in Russia, that's his plan. Geno likes it here. I mean, yeah. Geno likes when he's got free time. He's not in Moscow. He's in Miami. That's what he likes to do. So I don't know that he might go back, but I think Crosby, Malkin, and Letang in their perfect world would all play here until they're 40. I mean, I really believe that. So if they could be together,
I hope so.
I think that's their plan.
And then maybe they can make all the fans happy and bring Fleury back in 2 years as well. Then they can just have this reunion season where they may be terrible, but you're yeah, but you can watch all these guys that used to be good play one last season together.
I'm only for it if Ryan Malone and Colby Armstrong come out of retirement.
I think Ryan Whitney too. I mean, I think he's got money to now, but why not?
Hey, he's you watch those Spit and Chiclet videos. He's actually not a bad golfer. Whitney. He's a scratch golfer.
Man. My favorite Ryan Whitney moment was nothing other than him. I couldn't believe that he had this in him, but he beat the living hell out of somebody in the Ottawa series in 2007, and I was like, wait a minute, is that? I mean, he was throwing bombs, and I can't remember who he beat up, but I was I never expected that. That was my favorite Ryan Whitney moment.
All he did was score backdoor goals, but my God, he did it well.
Yeah. Josh, I got one more question for you. I'm going to move off of hockey for a second. I was, before you came on, we're looking at your Twitter bio, and I don't know how you've. This is the third time you're on the show, and I've not asked you this question. Favorite '90s band and favorite '90s one-hit wonder.
Oh,
Jeez. Boy, I do enjoy '90s music a great deal. My favorite song ever from the '90s would be "Bittersweet Symphony" by the Verve.
Oh, that's such a good.
They were
such
pretty
a
much
good
one-hit
song.
wonder, so I think that's a fair one-hit wonder.
yeah. Driving down the highway to that song, it makes you feel like you're in a movie. You're like,
Yeah, oh, absolutely it does. Like, my life is depressing, now I'm thinking about it even more. Absolutely.
it wasn't Chumbawamba. That was my answer.
That's a good one.
Mine is you only get what you give from the New Radicals.
Very good. My favorite '90s band. I'm a big Marcy Playground fan. That's my favorite, like,
Yeah.
'90s band that nobody remembers. I don't know. I mean, is it too cliched to say Nirvana? Because I think Nirvana stuff has aged so well. Like, I still listen to them all the time, and I still quite enjoy them. So
Dude, I've been playing guitar for 15 years. I play 3 or 4 different instruments, and this is probably gonna ruin my musician's card. I'm gonna have to give it up. I'm not a big Nirvana fan.
really,
I never was, man. I never was a big Nirvana fan. Never really. I like 2 or 3 songs, and that was really about it for me.
that's fair.
Yeah.
You're allowed to feel that way. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're allowed
I know I'm wrong on it, but I just
Music is subjective. My band of the '90s. I'm a metalhead, so it's Tool. So.
I hear they're great in concert. I've never seen them in concert, but I hear good.
Yeah,
things.
they're really great, especially if you enhance everything around you, and with enhancements, I'll call them. Yeah,
I know you don't do that, but nonetheless, I could imagine that would be the case.
They're one of the bands where they almost sound better live. Like I'll go see a band and I'm like, oh man, you can just tell like the sound quality and stuff isn't up to par.
Mm-hmm.
Like they almost like they're loud. Like I saw them at Mellon Arena and like that goddamn place was shaking. And then they have laser light shows and they bring out like demon heads and stuff like that. So yeah, you if you're not like up for that stuff, you can have like people were like fainting and stuff like that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, the Igloo was pretty good for concerts. All that noise would just come down on you.
I miss it, man.
Yeah.
I miss it.
I saw Metallica there in like '97. My ears hurt for a good week afterwards.
I didn't get to see Metallica until they came the last time they were at Consol. Well, PPG, whatever we're calling it now. Wallflowers is another one. I love the Wallflowers. But I saw that in your bio. I'm like, man, I'm a '90s. Like, I've got a 400 song list on my Spotify. And how did I not ask that question yet?
Like, even shitty '90s songs put me in a good mood. Like,
Absolutely,
I don't know
man.
what it is. I don't like '80s music. I like metal '80s, but in general, I don't always like '80s music in general. '90s music was great.
I think it was one of the better eras.
How
of
dare
music.
you guys not respect Hall & Oates, the greatest band ever of all time?
I respect Hall & Oates. Not my favorite, but still respect here.
Well, Josh, we'll let you get going because the Penguins puck drops in about 20 minutes here, and we all got to go sit in our wherever we sit and watch that game, and hopefully we don't let up another 7 or 8 goals tonight.
Yeah, they're going to only let up 5 or 6, so we'll see. I got to say though, you guys agree with me? The Rangers are fun as hell to watch.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
and they're only going to get they're going to get better. They still have I was looking at the prospect rankings, and I think they have like 4 of the top 50 prospects that are still not in the NHL right now. So
money to spend this summer too. That's
a
really good team.
The more comfortable Lafreniere gets, the more he really is fun.
Yes. Now I don't know if Marco's any good. I'm not sure about him, but I think Lafreniere. You give him
and
a couple years.
that Adam Fox kid. I mean, you're talking about
he's
Quinn Hughes. There's so many good young defensemen. That's why I'm like, John Marino had his having a sophomore slump, so I'm hoping he comes back. But you start to get jealous when you're like Quinn Hughes, Cal McCarr, now Adam Fox. They're like, I want one of those.
Oh, yeah. That's a nice shiny toy, no doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
All right,
listen,
man.
thanks, Josh. We really appreciate it. I thought this was one of our better episodes, and what we're gonna do is if you're wrong about all this stuff, we'll make sure that we come back and be like, okay, Joey was wrong about all this
I
stuff.
would expect nothing less. Clearly, I was wrong about your behavior at pool concerts, but that's okay. I always enjoy it, guys. Anytime. All you gotta
Definitely.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
See you, fellas.
Thanks for listening to 412 Sports Talk. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
If you like the show, leave us a review and be sure to tell a friend about your source for all things Pittsburgh sports. Find us on Twitter at MadChad412 and at Eddie_P_412.